Over the course of history, strange and often chilling coincidences have been found that fascinate and scare us hundreds of years later. Some of these fateful instances have explanations, reasons that explain their statistical unlikelihood, but others come down to chance alone, which can be even eerier. Number 5. One of the creepiest historical coincidences can be found in the story of Henry Zeiglund, a man whose final moments became a legendary fable. According to the story, in 1893, Zeiglund was a farmer in Honey Grove, Texas, who ended his relationship with a woman named Macy Tickner, telling her that he'd been unfaithful to her. Macy was devastated and ended up taking her own life, unable to live without him. Macy's brother wanted revenge for what Zeiglund had done to his sister, blaming him for her death. So he came to the man's house with a weapon, shooting once at Zeiglund before ending his own life. Luckily, Zeiglund easily survived the encounter, since his face had only been grazed, with the bullet ultimately hitting a nearby tree and becoming embedded in it. However, the story didn't end with this miracle. The bigger and scarier coincidence is what happened 20 years later. While Zeiglund and his son were chopping firewood one day, Zeiglund struck one tree over and over with his axe, yet it wouldn't budge. He resorted to using something many farmers used at the time, when necessary: dynamite. When Zeiglund and his son backed up far from the tree and the dynamite ignited, the tree exploded, but it turned out to be the same tree that his bullet had been lodged into years before, and it spit out the bullet, which sped straight toward him. Zeiglund lost his life that day. Some suspect that this story has no basis in reality and theorize that it was a hoax invented by teenage pranksters in the early 20th century. In records of Honey Grove, nobody can be found by the name of Zeiglund or Tickner. However, the story has been published several times in newspapers. The first time it was published was in the Jackson Evening News on March 24, 1905. Oddly, the story appeared again in 1913, still being reported as current news, which was when it really took off, running in different newspapers internationally. It's hard to say for sure whether this ironic story of Henry Zeiglund really occurred, and if it did, whether it happened exactly as it was originally reported. But the bizarre tale leads you to wonder whether such a scary coincidence could actually occur, and if it happened for a reason. While luck may have saved Zeiglund from death once, it seems the universe ultimately had other plans. Number 4. On March 5, 2002, a truly strange coincidence occurred in northern Finland. A 70-year-old man was riding his bike down an icy road when he was struck by a truck and lost his life. He had a twin brother living in the same town. The brother had not yet heard the news from police about the accident when he went out for a bike ride himself. This is where the bizarre coincidence comes in. Exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes after his twin was hit, the man was hit by a different truck, also losing his life. Even more strangely, the second accident had occurred at a junction only a mile from the first accident. Others involved in the case remarked about the shocking coincidence, saying, quote, "This is simply a historic coincidence," one police officer claimed. "Although the road is a busy one, accidents don't occur every day." She said, "It made my hair stand on end when I heard the two were brothers, and identical twins at that. It came to mind that perhaps someone from upstairs had a say in this." Could the officer be right about the eerie timing of the two brothers' deaths? Many believe twins are capable of some sort of telepathic communication, either conscious or subconscious. As far-fetched as it may seem, perhaps some force pulled the second twin to the side of his brother's loss without him even being aware of it. Number 3. In June of 2001, there was a 10-year-old girl named Laura Buxton from Trent in Staffordshire, celebrating her parents' 50th wedding anniversary. Seeing the many helium balloons at the party, she decided to release a balloon and attach a note to it. The message she wrote had the instructions, "Please return to Laura Buxton," which she attached to a gold balloon. She then let the balloon float away. That day, the balloon was discovered about 140 miles from the celebration, landing in a hedge next to the property of a farmer named Andy Rivers in Wiltshire. But in a truly eerie coincidence, Rivers saw the name Laura Buxton on the message and recognized it as one of his neighbor's daughters. There was another Laura Buxton of no relation to the first who happened to live nearby. The second Laura decided to get in touch with the first Laura, so she wrote to her explaining the strange coincidence of their names. The two then spoke on the phone, and eventually their parents actually arranged for them to meet in person. To make the whole situation even more bizarre, when they met, the two Laura Buxtons discovered a strange number of similarities between the two. They were around the same age, one being 10 and one about to turn 10. They had the same height, build, eye color, and hair color. They even had some of the same pets, including rabbits, guinea pigs, and their 3-year-old black Labradors. This unbelievable series of coincidences led them to stay in touch over the years. And in 2009, Radiolab interviewed the two Laura Buxtons. They were even included in a segment of Ripley's Believe It or Not. This unusual turn of fate has often been referenced in the years since it occurred. In one episode of the TV series Fargo, the sheriff tells the story. In the episode, he tries to make the point that humans see patterns everywhere, and massive coincidences are not actually likely or meaningful as they may seem. But it's telling that the sheriff ends up ignoring a significant mystery that he should have been paying attention to. It may not be impossible for one Laura Buxton's balloon to end up in another Laura Buxton's hand, but it's certainly a statistical anomaly. Number 2. In 1912, a 14-year-old boy by the name of John Parr lied about his age to join the Middlesex Regiment. Being small in height and weight, it was obvious that he was 5 years younger than the legal age, and his friends called him Ol' Parr. As World War I began, he became a reconnaissance cyclist, a soldier who rides ahead to scout out enemy soldiers who are advancing. But his fates turned when his battalion was stationed in a village in northern France. On August 21st, 1914, while on a scout, he ran into the German cavalry and lost his life. It was only 17 days after Britain had declared war, so on that day, John Parr became the first British soldier to be killed in the war. While Parr's body was not recovered, and it wasn't until a year later when his death was reported, eventually he was honored with a grave in the St. Symphorien Military Cemetery in Belgium. His age was officially marked as 20 years old in the cemetery register, though most accounts suggest he was younger. However, a scary coincidence crops up in Parr's story, related to another British soldier. Private George Edwin Ellison left the army to get married and became a coal miner, but he was recalled before the outbreak of World War I. He fought for 4 years in the trenches, surviving several famous battles and slaughters. But at 9:30 a.m. on November 11, 1918, Ellison finally lost his life at the age of 40. This was a significant day. At 5 a.m. earlier that morning, the armistice agreement had been signed to officially end the war, though the call of peace didn't occur until 11 a.m. That means Private Ellison lost his life just hours before the end of the war, making him the last British soldier to be killed in World War I. This event alone is scary and tragic, but the biggest coincidence is where Private Ellison's grave ended up. Like Private Parr, his gravestone was erected in the St. Symphorien Cemetery. Even more strangely, Parr and Ellison were placed very close to each other, only 7 yards apart. Over 850,000 British soldiers were killed in the war, but the very first and very last will always have a place together. While the oddness of this coincidence was not mentioned explicitly when Ellis was first buried, it's now often acknowledged. In November of 2018, in honor of the 100th anniversary of the armistice, Prime Minister Theresa May visited the cemetery and laid a wreath at the graves of the two men. As creepy as the coincidence is, the proximity of the two men is perhaps fitting. Visitors can pay respects to the sacrifices of these two servicemen who gave their lives for the country and made their mark on history forever. Number 1. Perhaps one of the scariest historical coincidences occurred in 1950, when 15 people miraculously survived an accident that should have ended their lives. In Nebraska, The West Side Baptist Church was set to meet for choir practice like they did every Wednesday evening at 7:20 p.m. But this particular Wednesday, at around 7:25, an explosion likely caused by natural gas destroyed the church, shattering windows in nearby houses and causing a radio station to go off the air. And yet, all 15 of the choir members escaped not only death, but even minor injury, without even knowing the explosion was coming. What saved them was a massive coincidence. All 15 members had been late for practice. Strangely, they all had various reasons for their lateness, rather than being late for the same reason. 2 women were delayed by car trouble. The minister, his wife, and their daughter were delayed because of a dress that needed to be ironed. The pianist, who planned to arrive early, had fallen asleep after dinner. Other members were late due to homework, a nap, a radio show, writing a letter, or other errands. Some didn't even have particular reasons to be late. They just gotten caught up in conversation or were late due to laziness. One report estimates that there was a 1 in 4 chance any individual choir member would show up late. That means the odds of all 15 showing up late were 1 in a million. This stunning statistic was discussed in a 1990 episode of Unsolved Mysteries that shared the story. It seems significant that such a miracle could occur in a place of worship. And sure enough, many of the choir members believed that God saved them from losing their lives that day. Marilyn Paul, who was the minister's daughter, said in an interview, quote, "I believe that night, and no one will convince me otherwise, that God didn't want us there. We were spared, and I'm very grateful." Could this scary coincidence have come about because of divine intervention? Or was it just a fluke of nature? Regardless, it remains one of the most stunning historical coincidences in American history. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knott, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.